Hey everyone, this is Jeanette, creator of Prime Future, and I wanted today to just do a brief dive into traceability. So we've talked about traceability a bit in the last few Prime Future newsletters, but I want to kind of put an exclamation mark on this and summarize the situation as I see it. So specifically, as we think about traceability in the beef supply chain, the main idea is that nobody cares until somebody pays. Let me say it again. Nobody cares until somebody pays. We've been talking about traceability and how do we do it and why do we do it and where do we do it for years. And the truth is, this isn't a technology problem, right? There's a lot of interesting technology that's come around in the last 3 to 5 years that will better enable traceability. But traceability is fundamentally a value proposition problem. And what I mean by that is who's going to pay, who is going to derive value as a result of that traceability. Ultimately, it comes down to where in the supply chain do the costs occur and where in the supply chain do the benefits accrue as a result of traceability. So let's talk through three scenarios of potential payers of traceability and what that can mean for the supply chain. So the first one is from a disease standpoint, so disease traceability. There are a lot of governments around the world that have made this a priority in order to, be prepared in the case of a disease outbreak. So take, for example, Australia. Obviously in the US, we have Cattle Trace, that is a voluntary program. But I heard one thought leader from Australia say that the interesting thing about the disease traceability use case is that that effectively allows a government to underwrite the technology that would be able to capture the individual animal data. Then producers, then brands, then everyone in the value chain can find additional uses for that data that creates value for players in the supply chain. But fundamentally, it's the government that has underwritten the technology, which has allowed adoption. Now, there are a lot of people in the US system that would reject that notion and that approach, for also equally valid and reasonable reasons. I offer that as one observation from a thought leader that I thought was pretty interesting. So aside from disease traceability, a second reason or a second player that might pay for traceability. And let me just back up here. When I say traceability, I'm talking about the infrastructure that's required in order to have traceability, the data, the infrastructure required to capture the data that's needed at an individual animal level, following them through all the way from cow-calf producer to backgrounder to stocker to feed yard to processing plant in the case of the US beef supply chain. So the second player that could pay is the brands, right? It's the food brands. It's, whether that's a retailer wanting traceability around a private label product, or whether that's, one of the packers' key brands, or whether that's a food service company like a McDonald's that says, hey, here's what we want and here's what we need in order to participate in our supply chain. That is, that's a perfectly valid option as well. And as brands make more claims about their supply chain, as our supply chains become more specialized via what we typically call a program, right, where the product's going to meet some set criteria, as there are more brands making more unique claims about their supply chain, the need is going to increase to verify those claims, right? So customers know if I'm paying a 2% premium, this product actually has the attributes that made me want to pay that premium, right? So brands could be a driver of traceability infrastructure. And then the third one is producers, right? This is where it gets a little bit tricky, is if we ask producers to bear the brunt of, let's say it's smart tags. If we ask producers to bear the cost of the infrastructure required to have traceability, we have to make sure that producers are going to see the ROI, right? And so what that ultimately means is that in addition to the value proposition around traceability itself and where those benefits accrue further downstream in the supply chain, we also have to make sure that the producer sees independent value from that infrastructure. So for example, smart tags. Maybe the producer is going to use adopt smart tags in some segment of their herd, the cow-calf producer adopt smart tags in some segment of their herd. And one reason they're going to do that is because that's going to give them traceability to sell into XYZ program, whether that's Snake River Farms, whoever that is. But they also have to independently reap value from those tags. So whether that's increased information about the location of animals that allows them to better manage their pastures, for example. But that idea of independent use cases for the technology that is going to drive independent value apart from the pure play traceability that's offered throughout the supply chain. So ultimately, like I said at the beginning, ultimately traceability and the case for traceability comes down to, first of all, nobody cares until somebody pays. And second of all, when we think about who might pay, that comes down to the question of where the costs distributed, where's the burden of costs throughout the supply chain, and where are the benefits accruing to. Is that to the producers? Is that to the brands? And the ultimate question is, what value does that have to the customer, to the end consumer, right? Or does that have value from a government perspective, from a regulatory perspective, in the case of a disease outbreak? So I think these are a lot of questions that the industry is working through right now. And my hypothesis is that over the next 2 to 4 years, we're going to see a lot of progress made in this space as the industry kind of coalesces around what does this look like, who pays, what are these alternative value propositions, and is this more about capturing a premium where it's implemented, or is this about maintaining market share at current pricing? So all of these things are really interesting, and look forward to seeing how the industry works through these questions.